Welcome back to Still Mind Path. We're all about navigating life through the lens of the Dharma. If you're looking for a calmer mind and a more meaningful life, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Let's get right into it. It's hard to deny that there are moments, days, even when the world just feels heavy. We all hit those stretches where the mood shifts, and suddenly, everything feels like a quiet, persistent irritation. Maybe it's the sheer weight of trying to keep everything afloat, the pressure of a life that feels a little too crowded, a little too loud. Or perhaps it's a job that hasn't turned out the way you hoped, leaving you with that dull ache of, is this it? Sometimes it's even deeper, something in the heart, a relationship that has lost its rhythm, leaving you feeling slightly unmoored and out of place. We all have our ways of trying to process that inner noise, don't we? Some of us retreat into ourselves, while others let it boil over. We see it everywhere, the sudden outburst, the sharp word, the flash of temper that seems to come out of nowhere. We might find ourselves lashing out, maybe even hurting the people around us, just to find a momentary release for that pressure building up inside. It's a human response, I suppose. But when you step back and look at it in the quiet of the night, you start to wonder where that heat actually comes from. It feels like our character, the way we show up in the world, is so often shaped by the circumstances we find ourselves in. And yet, there's this uncomfortable truth we sometimes have to face, that being quick to anger often comes from a place of being a bit too used to having things our way. It's almost as if we've been pampered by our own expectations. We focus so much on our own discomfort, our own needs, our own rightness, that we forget to look at the world through someone else's eyes. It's a quiet kind of selfishness, isn't it? To be so wrapped up in our own storm that we don't notice we're making everyone else wet. It's a strange thing, how we often reserve our worst behavior for the people we love the most. We treat the people closest to us with a harshness we would never dream of showing a stranger or a distant colleague. Maybe it's because we feel safe with them. We rely on the fact that they love us, that they'll forgive us, and so we let our guard down in the worst possible way. We feel entitled to their patience. We use their affection as a shield, thinking we can be as messy or as cruel as we feel in the moment, without ever stopping to think about the wounds we're leaving behind. We sit there, on one hand soaking up the warmth of their care, and on the other, letting our temper flare up over the smallest things. If we're being honest with ourselves, what else can we call that but a lack of awareness? It's worth pausing to look at that, to really sit with the way we've been showing up in those quiet, domestic moments. We have to ask ourselves if this is the person we really want to be, if this is the energy we want to leave in the rooms we inhabit. I've come to realize that, more often than not, a quick temper is just a sign of a lack of inner strength. It's a sign that we haven't quite learned how to sit with our own discomfort. We all know, deep down, that getting angry doesn't actually fix the problem. It doesn't pay the bills, it doesn't fix the broken car, and it certainly doesn't heal a hurting heart. What it does is cloud our vision. When that fire of anger is lit, it consumes everything. It makes it impossible to think clearly, to speak kindly, or to even just breathe. Have you ever noticed that? How when you're truly angry, even your breath feels shallow and forced. It's like the air itself becomes heavy. There's no benefit to it, nothing gained, and yet we hold on to it like it's a weapon, when really, it's a weight. It's a heavy, jagged rock we're carrying around in our pockets, wondering why we feel so tired. To not be able to control our own emotional weather is a kind of powerlessness. It's an admission that we are at the mercy of every little thing that goes wrong. When things feel out of balance, I've found that the kindest thing we can do for ourselves and everyone else is to just be silent. Because anything we say when that fire is burning is going to be scorched. There's no wisdom in a heated tongue. And when we direct that heat at the people we actually care about, the regret that follows usually hurts more than the initial problem ever did. It's a cycle that just keeps spinning. It's helpful, maybe, to distinguish between the things that truly matter and the things that are just noise. Getting upset over the actions of someone who doesn't even know us, a stranger in traffic. A comment on a screen is like taking someone else's mistake and using it to punish ourselves. We let their errors ruin our afternoon, our dinner, our sleep. We end up being the ones who suffer for a fault that wasn't even ours to begin with. Why do we do it? Why do we let the rumors, the misunderstandings, or the lack of respect get under our skin so easily? Perhaps it's just because we're human. We have these hearts that want to be seen, to be valued, to be treated fairly. And when the world doesn't play by those rules, it hurts. It's natural to feel that sting. But there comes a point where we have to decide how long we're going to let that sting last. Sometimes, the best move is to just stop. Stop the conversation. Stop the internal rehearsal of what you should have said, and just let the heart settle. It's like waiting for the mud in a glass of water to sink to the bottom so the water can be clear again. If we can practice letting go of those grievances, if we can step over the mistakes of others instead of tripping over them, life starts to feel a bit more spacious. The walls don't feel like they're closing in quite so much. I think about the arc of a life sometimes. We arrive here because we have to, and one day we'll leave because we have to. It's that middle part, the stretch of time we're in right now, that belongs to us. That's where our choices live. Some people spend that middle part chasing things that don't breathe money, status, the need to always be right. Others try to find their way through gratitude, or a bit of simple kindness, or just learning how to be content with what's on their plate. Because the choices we make in how we react to the world, they eventually become the story of our lives. When we're young and healthy, we want everything. We have this endless list of desires, this hunger for more, more, more. But it's funny how a little time or a change in health shifts the lens. You look at someone lying in a hospital bed, and suddenly, their wants become very small and very simple. The big ambitions fade away, and the worries change shape. They stop worrying about their career and start worrying about being a burden to their children. They worry about the money they might need to borrow, or the stress their spouse is feeling. Even the people around them start to see things differently. Friends might worry about the awkwardness of money. Parents worry about the natural order of things being disrupted, and leaders at work worry about who will fill the gap. And the doctors, they're just looking at charts and bills. In those moments, all the pride in the world doesn't help. All the being right or being important just falls away. It makes you realize that while we have our health, while we have our breath, the most important thing we can do is take care of this life we've been given. It's about trying to live the life we actually want, rather than the one we think we're supposed to have. None of this is easy. Life is a mix of everything: the sweet, the bitter, the joy, and the grief. It's all in the pot together. I think the real skill, the real strength, is finding a way to take a life that feels difficult and somehow find the romance in it. To take a world that can be cold and indifferent and find the deep, warm connections that make it worth staying for. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. We know this, but we forget it every single day. We wait for the perfect moment to be happy, or the perfect person to love, or the perfect set of circumstances to finally feel at peace. But look at the moon. As soon as it's full, it starts to fade. Look at the sun at its highest point. It begins its descent to the west. There's a certain beauty in the almost, isn't there? A flower that's just about to bloom, a moon that's almost round. It's the slight imperfection, the feeling that there's still room to grow, that makes things feel real. If we can learn to accept that things are supposed to be a little bit broken, then a lot of our problems just stop being problems. It's like knowing how to duck your head when you walk through a low doorway. You don't get mad at the door, you just adjust. You learn when to give way on a crowded path so you don't keep bumping shoulders. You learn that a heart that's always looking to learn is the one that actually moves forward. And a heart that knows what enough feels like, that's the one that finally gets to rest. There is a particular kind of restlessness that comes when we know, deep down, that it's time to move on from something, and yet we find ourselves staying. It's that feeling of being caught between two worlds, the one we are living in and the one we know we need to step into. We talk about letting go as if it's a simple flick of the wrist, a casual decision made over a morning coffee, but in reality, it often feels more like trying to peel back a layer of our own skin. We wonder why we can't just walk away, why we can't just stop the cycle of thoughts that keeps us tethered to a person, a job, or even a version of ourselves that no longer fits. I've been thinking about a story I heard once, about a man who was carrying a heavy weight in his heart, a deep sense of unresolved attachment. He went to see a teacher, someone who seemed to have found that quiet center we all go looking for. He asked, with a voice full of frustration, "Why is it that I can't let go? Why do these things, these people, stay stuck in my mind no matter how hard I try to push them away?" The teacher didn't give him a lecture or a list of steps to follow. Instead, he just handed the man a simple ceramic teacup and told him to hold it. As the man held the cup, the teacher began to pour hot tea into it. He poured until it reached the brim, but he didn't stop there. He kept pouring. The steam rose up, and the hot liquid began to spill over the sides, running down the man's fingers. For a second or two, the man tried to endure it, his face tightening with the effort to hold on, but eventually, the heat became too much. The pain was sharp and immediate. Without even thinking about it, he opened his hand and let the cup fall. It hit the ground, the tea splattered, and the man finally found his breath. The teacher just looked at him quietly and said, "Nothing is impossible to let go of. You only hold on because it hasn't hurt you enough yet. When it hurts enough, you will put it down." It's a bit of a jarring thought, isn't it? The idea that we choose our suffering until the pain of staying becomes greater than the fear of leaving. We think we can't let go of our titles, the way the world sees us, or the security of a paycheck that drains our soul. We think we can't let go of a love that has turned cold, or a resentment we've nourished for years. But perhaps the truth is just that we are still seduced by the memory of how those things once felt. We're still dreaming of what they could be, rather than seeing what they are. We stay in the burning room because we remember when it was a home, even while the smoke is filling our lungs. We cling to our careers because they give us a name to use at parties, a way to feel like we're somebody. We cling to money because we've been told it's the only way to be safe, even when the pursuit of it leaves us feeling completely unprotected. We cling to love long after the respect has vanished because we're terrified of the silence that might follow. It's as if we have these internal what-ifs that act like anchors. What if I change? What if they change? What if the future is better if I just try one more time? This hesitation, this back and forth, it's such a human thing. We're slow to hold on and even slower to let go. We overthink every move, worrying about the before and the after, until the now is just a blurry mess of anxiety. But if we were to experience a sudden shock, a brush with something truly final, a moment where life shows us just how fragile everything is, I suspect all those things we thought were essential would drop away in an instant. We'd realize that we've been carrying a trunk full of lead when we could have been walking with empty hands. I often think about our lives like a house we move into when it's brand new and empty. In the beginning, we're so careful about what we bring in. We want things that serve a purpose, things that reflect who we think we are. But as the years go by, the rooms start to fill up. We buy things for comfort, things for status, things just because we had a bad day and wanted a little spark of something new. We tuck boxes into the attic and shove old memories into the back of the closet. Then, 20 years later, we realize we're living in a cramped, cluttered space. We can barely move without bumping into some ghost of a past desire. We think about clearing it out. We really do. We look at an old coat or a gadget we never used and we think, I should throw this away. But then we pause. We remember the day we bought it, or the person who gave it to us, or the person we hoped to be when we owned it. And so, it stays. We find ourselves living in a tiny, suffocating corner of our own lives because we're too sentimental about the clutter. But imagine if, one day, the roof starts to leak. Imagine a heavy, relentless rain that finds its way through the ceiling, soaking everything you've stored away. The old papers are ruined, the fabric is molding, the things you cherished are suddenly just a soggy mess. In that moment of true destruction, it's suddenly very easy to throw them out. The pain of the loss is already there, so the act of letting go becomes a relief. We realize that we don't actually need the stuff to keep the memories. We don't need the clutter to prove we've lived. There are so many things in this life that we probably should have put down a long time ago. We hold on to them until they become a kind of prison, a set of invisible chains that keep us from ever feeling truly free. But if we can find the courage to let go, not because we've been forced to by a catastrophe, but because we finally recognize that the weight is no longer serving us, that's when we find a different kind of peace. A quiet, steady joy that doesn't need to own anything to be whole. It's like that old saying about a bird in a cage. The cage might be gold, it might be safe, but it's still a cage. True freedom isn't about having everything. It's about needing very little. It's about being able to walk through the world with a light heart, knowing that whatever comes and whatever goes, the you at the center of it all remains untouched. It feels like we spend so much of our time trying to fix the outside of our lives, trying to arrange the furniture just right so we can finally feel okay. But maybe the work is actually on the inside. Maybe it's about looking at the way we've built our own internal houses and realizing that we can choose which doors to open and which windows to let the light through. We don't have to be defined by what we've lost or what we've managed to keep. We can just be here, in this moment, noticing the way the air feels, the way the silence sits in the room. There's a certain kind of wisdom that comes from simply letting things be as they are, without trying to grab them or push them away. It's like watching clouds pass across a summer sky. They come in all sorts of shapes, some dark and heavy, some light and wispy, but the sky doesn't try to hold on to them. It just lets them drift through, knowing that its own nature is the vast, blue space behind them. If we can start to see our thoughts and our attachments like those clouds, maybe we can stop feeling so overwhelmed. Maybe we can realize that we are the sky, not the storm. And when we really understand that, we don't have to try so hard to let go. We just stop holding on. It's a slow process, I know. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a practice of turning toward the present moment, again and again, even when the past keeps calling our name. We have to learn how to live in the now, without constantly looking over our shoulder at what was, or leaning too far forward into what might be. We have to trust that if we show up fully for this breath, the next one will take care of itself. There's a freedom in that, isn't there? To not have to solve everything today, to not have to be perfect, to just be a person who is learning how to walk a little more lightly on the earth. We're all just trying to find our way back to that sense of quiet, that place where we don't need to be anyone special, where we don't need to prove anything to anyone. We're just here, part of the flow of things, like water in a river that knows exactly where it's going without ever having to check a map. I think about the way we talk about our destiny or our fate, as if it's some external force that's being imposed on us. But maybe our destiny is just the path we create with every thought we choose to keep. If we choose thoughts of lack and resentment, our path feels narrow and rocky. If we choose thoughts of compassion and release, the path opens up. It's as if we are the architects of our own internal landscape, and we've forgotten that we have the power to move the mountains. It's worth wondering, in the quiet moments of the day, what we're still carrying that we no longer need. What old stories are we still telling ourselves? What expectations are we still trying to live up to? Maybe today is the day we can just let the cup fall. Maybe today is the day we can stop worrying about the mess it might make and just focus on the fact that our hands are finally free. I've been wondering if we ever truly lose anything, or if it all just transforms into something else. I've been wondering if we ever truly lose anything, or if it all just transforms into something else. It's a strange comfort, isn't it? To think that the things we feel are being taken from us are actually just moving back into the flow of the world. We tend to view change as a kind of theft, a robbery committed by time or fate. When a relationship ends, or a project fails, or even when we lose a physical object we've cherished, it feels like a hole has been punched through the fabric of our lives. We feel diminished, but maybe that's only because we've forgotten that everything we have, every person, every comfort, every breath, is actually a gift on loan from the universe. Sometimes, when the world seems to be crumbling around us, we feel like we're about to collapse. It's a heavy, suffocating sensation. But if we can shift our perspective just a little bit, maybe we can start to see it differently. We've spent so much of our lives enjoying these gifts, these offerings from the world around us. We've soaked up the warmth, the love, the successes, and then, when the universe decides it's time to take a little bit back, to share it with someone else, we act as if it's a betrayal. We feel bitter. But why? If it's all part of a natural cycle, the coming and the going, the gathering and the scattering, then the loss isn't really a tragedy. It's just the tide going out. It's the most natural thing in the world. Things come together and things fall apart. We know this. We see it in the seasons, in the leaves that turn gold and fall, in the way the morning mist eventually vanishes into the heat of the day. And yet, we spend so much of our energy trying to make things permanent. We want our joy to be forever. We want our security to be fixed. We want the people we love to never, ever change. It's this insistence on things being always that causes us so much grief, because the very nature of life is sometimes. Think about how much we struggle just to keep things the same. We fight against the wrinkles in our skin, the shifts in our careers, the inevitable distance that grows in certain friendships. We're so busy trying to hold back the clock that we forget to actually live in the hour we're in. And for what? Even if we win for a moment, the victory is temporary. There's a quiet tragedy in that, but also a hidden relief. If nothing is permanent, then even our darkest moments are just passing through. The pain isn't a permanent resident, it's just a traveler staying for a night. I sometimes see people who are so focused on their own gain, their own comfort, that they don't care who they have to step on to get it. They chase these massive, towering ambitions, building lives that are so big they can't even see the edges anymore. But when you really strip it all down, what do we actually need? We eat 3 meals a day. We sleep in one bed. We occupy only a few square feet of space at any given time. So why do we carry these enormous, heavy desires? Why do we think we need the biggest house, the most expensive car, the highest title, when all they really do is increase our anxiety about losing them? It's like we're trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much we pour in more money, more praise, more things, the feeling of not enough just keeps leaking out. That constant hunger for more is so exhausting. It keeps us in a state of perpetual dissatisfaction, always looking at the next thing, the next horizon, while the meal in front of us goes cold. I've had to learn that letting go doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean we stop caring or stop trying. There's a big difference between letting go of our desires and letting go of our responsibilities. We still have our duties to our families, our work, and the people who rely on us. We still show up, but we let go of the need to control the outcome. We do the work because it's the right thing to do, not because we're demanding a specific reward from the world. When we can separate our effort from our expectations, we find a strange kind of freedom. We can work hard, love deeply, and strive for things, but if it doesn't work out, we aren't destroyed by it. We just breathe and move on to the next thing. There's this habit some of us have, I know I certainly do, of being a little too meticulous. We pay so much attention to every tiny detail, every slight, every minor mistake. We nitpick the people around us, and we nitpick ourselves even harder. We treat every little inconvenience like it's a major crisis. And it's exhausting, isn't it? To live life with that level of intensity, always on the lookout for what's wrong. It makes us rigid. It makes us hard to be around. We get so caught up in the small stuff that we miss the actual experience of living. I've started to notice that the people who seem the most at peace are often the ones who are a little bit, let's call it, careless, in the best possible way. Not that they don't care, but they know how to let things slide. They don't hold on to every little irritation. They don't need every person they meet to understand them or agree with them. They're okay with things being a bit messy. They've realized that being right isn't nearly as important as being at peace. When you stop trying to manage everyone else's behavior and every little circumstance, you suddenly have all this extra time and energy. It's like clearing a path through an overgrown forest. You can actually see where you're going. Life becomes simpler. It becomes more about the actual flavor of the day, the taste of the coffee, the sound of the wind, the feeling of just being alive, rather than a constant battle to make sure everyone is doing what you think they should be doing. I think about the word patience a lot. It's not just about waiting for something to happen. It's about how we behave while we wait. It's a kind of inner strength, a quiet resilience. The old stories always talk about people who did great things having great patience, and I think I'm starting to understand why. Patience is the ability to sit with discomfort without trying to run away from it. It's the ability to let an insult pass by without feeling the need to throw one back. It's not about being weak or being a doormat. It's about being so grounded in yourself that the storms outside can't knock you over. When we know how to be patient, we make fewer mistakes. We don't act out of impulse or fear. We don't say the thing we'll regret 5 minutes later. We just wait. We give the situation room to breathe, and usually, if we wait long enough, the problem either resolves itself or the way forward becomes clear. It makes me think about kindness too. Not the performative kind of kindness where we want people to see how good we are, but a quiet, steady kind of goodness. The kind that doesn't need an audience. It might not get us everything we want in life. It might not make us rich or famous, but it does something much more important. It keeps our hearts soft. It keeps us connected to the world in a way that's actually meaningful. There's a certain beauty in a face that has grown kind over the years. You can see it in the eyes, in the way the lines around the mouth have settled. It's a look that comes from the inside out. They say that by the time we're in the middle of our lives, our character is written on our faces. If we spend our years being resentful and calculative, it shows. But if we spend them trying to be a little more understanding, a little more tolerant, that shows too. It's about choosing a way of being that doesn't just benefit us, but makes the world a little less harsh for everyone we encounter. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to be a little more intentional about the energy we're putting out there. Because, in the end, that's all we really have to give. I've been thinking lately about how we treat people who disagree with us, or people who don't seem to get us. We spend so much time trying to explain ourselves, trying to win the argument, trying to prove that our way of seeing things is the correct one. But maybe it's okay if they don't see it. Maybe it's okay to be misunderstood. If we're confident in who we are and what we're doing, we don't need everyone else's validation to make it real. It's like a tree growing in a deep forest. It doesn't need anyone to tell it that it's doing a good job. It just grows. It reaches for the light. It sinks its roots into the earth, and it exists in its own time and its own way. There's a dignity in that, a self-reliance that we often forget we're capable of. We can just walk our path, even if we're walking it alone for a while. We don't need a cheering section. We don't need a trophy at the end. We just need to know that we're moving in a direction that feels honest, a direction that feels true to the quiet voice inside us that knows the difference between what's loud and what's right. It makes me wonder why we're so afraid of being overlooked, of being ordinary. We're taught to want to be special, to be extraordinary, to stand out from the crowd. But there's so much peace in the ordinary, isn't there? In the simple rhythm of a day that doesn't demand anything of us other than to just be there, to just exist. I was watching a bird the other day, just a small, brown bird sitting on a fence. It wasn't doing anything important. It wasn't singing for an audience. It was just sitting there, feeling the sun on its feathers. And I thought, what if that's enough? What if just being part of the world, just being here to witness the light change and the seasons turn, is actually the whole point? We complicate things so much. We build these elaborate structures of meaning and purpose, and then we get stressed when they start to wobble. But maybe the meaning is just in the breathing. Maybe the purpose is just in the noticing. If we could just lower our gaze a little bit, down from the far-off goals and the big ambitions, and look at what's right in front of us, maybe we'd find that the peace we've been looking for has been here the whole time, just waiting for us to stop moving long enough to feel it. It's like we're always looking for a grand entrance, a big sign that we've finally arrived. But life is mostly made of small side doors and quiet hallways. It's easy to get caught up in the momentum of a crowd, isn't it? We're taught from such a young age that the only way to get anywhere is to push, to strive, to always be taking that next step forward. We're told that if we aren't gaining ground, we're losing it. But I've been thinking lately about the quiet power of simply stepping back. There's an old sentiment that suggests if you take one step back, the ocean feels wider and the sky looks higher. It sounds counterintuitive in a world that demands constant progress, but there's a strange kind of victory in a well-timed retreat. Sometimes we push so hard to win an argument, to prove a point, or to claim a tiny piece of territory in our social circles that we lose ourselves in the process. We might win, but at what cost? We've traded our peace, our kindness, and our clarity for a moment of being right. If moving forward means losing who you are, then maybe stepping back is actually the bravest thing you can do. It's not about giving up or being weak. It's about having the great air, that internal spaciousness that doesn't need to fight every battle. It's about realizing that sometimes yielding a bit of ground gives you a lot more room to breathe. We've built this whole world around the idea of success, haven't we? We've defined it by what we'll achieve in the future, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, next year. We've turned our current lives into a kind of waiting room, a prison where we're constantly looking at the door, waiting for success to finally let us out. But what does it really mean to succeed if we've forgotten how to live in the hour we're actually inhabiting? We spend our days chasing shadows, following a version of success that society has pre-packaged for us, and we end up missing the actual life that's happening right under our noses. It feels like we're constantly trying to find the white in the black or the black in the white. We spend so much time analyzing, judging, and trying to categorize everything and everyone we meet. But there's such a profound peace in just letting things be what they are. To see white as white, to see black as black, without the labels, without the shoulds, without the constant need to fix or change the view. Life is always at peace when we stop trying to paint it a different color. I've noticed that when I start to feel heavy, when the world starts to feel a bit more hostile or disappointing, it's usually because my own internal lens has gotten a bit smudgy. It's so easy to look around and see everyone as difficult, or suspicious, or somehow wrong. But there's a hard truth in the idea that if I'm thinking poorly of everyone around me, it's my own heart that's feeling poor in that moment. My judgment of you is actually a much better reflection of my own state of mind than it is of yours. If I can look at someone and see their goodness, it's because there's goodness active in me. And if I look at someone and see only their flaws, perhaps it's because I'm struggling with my own. It's a bit of a shift, isn't it? To realize that everyone around us is just doing the best they can with the tools they have. Maybe they aren't bad. Maybe they just haven't had the conditions yet to let their best self show. When we can start to see people that way, the world stops feeling like a battlefield and starts feeling like a garden that just needs a little more sun, a little more time. I try to practice that, even just for a day, to look at every person I pass and decide, just for today, that no one is bad. It's an interesting experiment. The weight that lifts off your shoulders when you stop being the judge and jury for the rest of humanity is incredible. You start to feel lighter, more fluid. You stop carrying everyone else's mistakes like they're your own burden to solve. It feels like there are really only 3 kinds of business in this world. There's my business, what I eat, how I act, how I treat people, whether I'm happy or sad today. Then there's your business, the choices you make, your work, your relationships, how you feel about me. And then there's the universe's business, the weather, the passage of time, the things that are completely beyond any human control. Most of our misery comes from the fact that we're constantly meddling. We neglect our own business because we're too busy trying to manage someone else's, and we're stressed out of our minds, worrying about the universe's business. We're upset that it's raining. We're frustrated that a colleague is lazy, and meanwhile, our own internal house is a mess because we aren't even there to clean it. If we could just stay in our own business, life would be so much quieter. If you're unhappy in your marriage, that's your business. If the sky is gray today, that's the universe's business. My business is how I respond to it all. It's such a simple way to look at things, but it's remarkably hard to do. We want to fix the rain, and we want to fix our neighbors, and we end up feeling powerless because we're trying to move mountains that don't belong to us. When we feel that familiar prickle of anxiety or frustration, it's worth asking, whose business am I in right now? Usually, if you're suffering, you're in someone else's. If we can pull ourselves back, return to our own center, and just handle the small, immediate things that are actually ours to handle, the world starts to feel manageable again. It's like having a dirty finger. You don't cut the finger off because it got some mud on it. You just wash it. You don't throw away the whole head because the hat doesn't fit. You just adjust the hat. We tend to be so extreme in our reactions, so ready to tear things down when they aren't perfect. But a closed door doesn't mean the end of the journey. It just means there's a different hallway, a different view we haven't seen yet. The question is whether we're willing to stop banging on the locked door long enough to notice the one that's standing wide open. A lot of our pain comes from that stubbornness, that refusal to let go of the way we thought things were going to go. We get so attached to a specific outcome that we can't see the gifts that are actually being offered to us in the present. We're so busy trying to build a mansion that we don't notice the quiet joy of a small, simple hut where the light hits the floor just right. I've been thinking about the keys we need to move through this life with a bit more grace. It feels like there are 3 of them: acceptance, change, and moving away. If you find yourself in a situation that's hurting you and you can't accept it as it is, then you have to try to change it. But if you can't change it, and you still can't accept it, then the only thing left is to move away, to just walk a different path. Yet, so many of us choose a 4th option. We stay exactly where we are, refusing to accept it, refusing to move, and just complaining about it. We let ourselves become bitter. We blame the world for not being different, for not being easier. But the world is just the world. It's got its own rhythm, its own business. It doesn't owe us a smooth road. It just offers us a road. I've noticed that people who tend toward optimism use their smiles like a bridge. They use them to cross over the things that don't go their way. But those who lean into pessimism, they tend to build walls with their complaints. They get so focused on why things are happening to them that they forget to ask what they're actually contributing to the situation. We want everyone to be good to us, but maybe the better question is whether we're being the kind of person that goodness wants to be around. We worry so much about whether people understand us. We want to be seen, to be validated, to have our side of the story heard. But everyone is living in their own world, with their own tastes and their own preoccupations. We can't wait for everyone to get us before we start living. We just have to know, for ourselves, what we're doing and where we're headed. If we can focus on creating value in our own lives, on refining our own character, the world has a way of eventually noticing, or maybe it doesn't, and that's okay too. Our lives are so short, whether they last 20 years or 100, each day is just a continuation, a stepping stone. And none of us are perfect. No job is perfect. No day is perfect. If we meet someone who seems small-minded or petty, why do we let ourselves get dragged down into that same pettiness? Calculating every slight only adds more baggage to our own journey. If a situation is complicated, maybe we don't need to overthink it. Maybe thinking less is actually the way to feel more. The world is big, and people are complicated. There will always be moments of misunderstanding. There will always be a little dust in the air. But we can choose to look past the dust to the horizon. We can choose to be silent when we're angry, and to let a smile handle the things that words can't fix. Even if the sun isn't out today, we can still listen to the wind. We can still smell the rain. There's a quietness that comes when you stop asking for applause, when you stop needing the world to tell you you're doing a good job. You just do the work. You walk the path. You keep your heart as clear as you can, and you trust that the seasons will turn as they always do. We don't need to complain, and we don't need to hurry. We can just take a deep breath and change the internal atmosphere, one thought at a time. If we encounter a setback, we can just start again. It's not a failure, it's just more information. It's a chance to face ourselves, to be a little more open with life, to practice a bit more forgiveness. And in that practice, we might find that the days start to pass a little more gently. It feels like the things that make us suffer most are often the very things we're working so hard to protect. It's a strange thing, isn't it? How much we burden ourselves with the weight of wanting more. We spend so much of our energy building these elaborate structures of desire, convinced that the next acquisition, the next milestone, or the next layer of security will be the one that finally allows us to rest. But when you really strip it all back, when you get down to the bare bones of what it means to be a human being on this earth, it's remarkably simple. We only need a few meals a day. We only need one place to lay our heads at night. We occupy such a small physical space, yet our desires are often large enough to swallow the whole world. I've been sitting with this idea of enough. It feels like one of those keys that could unlock so many of the doors we feel trapped behind. There's an old saying that suggests knowing enough is the only way to ever truly have enough. Because if we don't know where that line is, we'll just keep chasing it forever. It's like waiting for the horizon to stop moving so you can finally reach it. The hunger just grows with the eating, and that constant, nagging feeling of dissatisfaction that not yet that follows us around is the source of so much of our inner noise. I wonder if we can learn to separate our needs from that endless craving. It's not about giving up on life or stopping our efforts. It's more about realizing that our happiness doesn't have to be a hostage to our ambitions. We can work, we can build, and we can care, but we can do it with a heart that is already full. When the wanting is no longer a desperate scream, but more like a quiet suggestion, the whole world starts to look a lot friendlier. It's often said that life isn't a race, but we certainly treat it like one. We're so focused on the finish line, on the when I get there, or the once I have this, that we completely miss the scenery along the way. We forget that the journey is the life. There's no special reward waiting at the end that makes all the stress and the hurry worth it. The reward is just the experience of being here, right now, in whatever version of the journey we happen to be on. It's funny and a little heartbreaking to think that many of us might not truly realize we're living until we're just about to stop. We spend our days as if we have an infinite supply of them, lost in the fog of our worries and our plans. But if we can bring our awareness back to our breath, just this one breath, coming in and going out, we realize that this is where life is actually happening. If we aren't present for our own breathing, are we really alive? Or are we just existing? Like a clock ticking in an empty room. I've been thinking a lot about stillness lately. Not just the absence of noise, but a deep, internal quiet. We often forget that we come from stillness. Before we were born, there was silence, and when we leave, there will be silence again. Even in our daily lives, we have this natural rhythm that pulls us back toward the quiet. Why do we get tired? Why do we need to sleep? It's because the mind can't handle being on all the time. It needs to return to that state of nothing, that empty space where everything resets. Have you ever noticed that when you're facing a problem that feels impossible, something so complex and tangled that you can't see a way through, the best thing you can do is just stop? You put it down. You let the mind go quiet. You stop trying to think your way out of it. And then, often when you're doing something completely unrelated, like washing the dishes or taking a walk, the solution just arrives. It's as if the answer was waiting in the stillness all along, but the noise of your thinking was too loud for you to hear it. That's the power of the quiet. It's not empty. It's where the real clarity lives. If we can carry a little bit of that stillness with us into the busy parts of our day, everything changes. The things we have, our successes, our comforts, our possessions, they start to feel like what they actually are, temporary. If things are going well, we can enjoy them, knowing they won't last forever. And if things are difficult, we can find comfort in the same truth. This too will pass. Nothing in this life is a permanent fixture. It's all just passing through. Sometimes, when we hit a dead end or a moment where everything feels stuck, we think it's the end of the road. But maybe it's just a bend. Maybe it's just life's way of asking us to slow down and look at things from a different angle. It's like that old metaphor about being handed a sour lemon. You could just bite into it and complain about the bitterness, or you could take that same lemon and turn it into something refreshing. The lemon hasn't changed. Its nature is still sour, but your relationship to it has changed. If you approach life with a sense of openness and maybe even a little bit of curiosity, those bitter moments, The setbacks, the disappointments, the obstacles can become the very things that help us grow. The puckered face we make at the sourness can turn into a smile of appreciation for the drink we've managed to make. It's all about the alchemy of the heart. I think a lot of our suffering comes from this desire for things to be perfect or absolute. We want the people in our lives to treat us perfectly, with total understanding and endless patience. We want our relationships to be flawless, but when we start demanding perfection from a world that is inherently flawed, we're just setting ourselves up for a lot of resentment. If we can learn to accept the relative nature of things, life becomes so much softer. Maybe the person who hurt your feelings isn't a bad person. Maybe they're just a person who made a mistake, or who is carrying their own heavy burden. Maybe the things you find annoying about someone you love are just the flip side of the things you find wonderful about them. When you look closely at the people you admire most, you'll see that they aren't perfect either. They have their lapses in judgment, their moments of selfishness, their little quirks that could be seen as difficult, but you love them anyway. You see their relative goodness. And if you can do that for them, maybe you can start to do it for everyone else too, even for yourself. We're all just a mixture of light and shadow, doing our best to navigate a world that doesn't always make sense. If we can stop demanding that everything be absolutely one way or another, we can start to appreciate the messy, beautiful reality of how things actually are. We can be less disappointed when people let us down and more grateful when they show up for us. It feels like the secret to a happy life isn't about finding a world where nothing goes wrong. It's about building an inner world that is strong enough and wide enough to hold it all. A heart that can be hurt, but still choose to stay open. A mind that can be confused, but still choose to stay kind. The world is going to keep spinning. People are going to keep being complicated. The sun will rise and it will set. We can't control any of that, but we can control the way we sit with it. We can choose to be the one who brings a little more light into the room, rather than the one who is always pointing out the dust. It's a long journey, learning how to be at peace with the way things are. It requires a lot of patience and even more practice. We have to keep reminding ourselves that it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to be a work in progress. And it's okay to just be here, right now, noticing the way the shadows are stretching across the floor as the day begins to fade. There's a comfort in knowing that we aren't alone in this. Everyone you see, everyone you pass on the street, is carrying their own version of this same struggle. We're all just trying to find our way back to that sense of quiet, that place where we can finally put down the heavy bags we've been carrying and just be. Maybe the most important thing we can do is just offer each other a little bit of grace as we go. A little more room to be imperfect. A little more silence where there used to be judgment. Because in the end, we're all part of the same story, even if we're on different pages. It's interesting how we often think we need to go somewhere to find peace, as if it's a destination we can plug into a map. But I'm starting to think it's more like a frequency we have to learn how to tune into, right where we are. I've been thinking lately about how we spend so much of our lives waiting for something absolute. We want absolute certainty in our choices, absolute loyalty from our friends, absolute perfection in our partners. We have this internal blueprint of how things should be, and we spend a staggering amount of energy trying to force the messy, moving parts of our lives to fit into those rigid lines. But maybe the real beginning of peace, the kind that actually stays with you when the lights go out, is simply learning to live in the relative. It's a bit like looking at a reflection in a moving pond. You can't demand that the water stay perfectly still so you can see every detail of your face. You have to learn to recognize yourself in the ripples. We are all interdependent. No one lives entirely for themselves, and nothing in this world exists in a vacuum. We are all woven together, one life leaning on another, one moment giving birth to the next. Because we are so deeply connected, nothing can ever be absolutely perfect on its own. Everything is relative. Your happiness depends on your health. Your health depends on the air you breathe. The air depends on the trees, and on it goes. When we accept this, that life is a series of, well, it's mostly okay, or it's enough for now, the pressure just seems to drain away. We stop being so disappointed in people. If you look closely at someone you've been holding a grudge against, someone you've labeled as difficult or even unbearable, and you really let yourself see them, you might find something surprising. You might notice a small, quiet part of them that is actually quite endearing. Maybe it's the way they care for their dog, or the tired look in their eyes at the end of a long day, or a flicker of a sense of humor that only comes out when they feel safe. If we can see that their badness is only relative, that they are just a person struggling with their own set of shadows, then our own anger becomes relative too. It's no longer this solid, heavy thing we have to carry. It becomes lighter. It becomes something we can put down. We realize that our hatred was just a prison we built for ourselves, a cage where we were both the prisoner and the guard. It's a strange irony that we often demand perfection from the world around us, while being acutely aware of our own flaws. We know we aren't perfect. We know we've made mistakes, that we've been selfish, or that we've said things we wish we could take back. And yet, we walk into our relationships and our jobs with this invisible yardstick, measuring everyone else against a standard we couldn't possibly meet ourselves. We trap ourselves in this prison of the heart, built out of our own shoulds and musts. But what if we could just let that yardstick go? What if we acknowledge that everyone is navigating their own storm, often with a map that's half torn and a compass that's spinning? When we realize that nobody, not us, and certainly not the people we love, is an absolute, we stop being so surprised when things get messy. We stop feeling like a victim of life's imperfections and start feeling like a participant in its complexity. There is only one person who can truly change the way you experience the world, and that's you. It sounds like a cliché, I know, but when you sit with it in the quiet, it's actually a quite daunting responsibility. It means that my happiness isn't waiting for someone else to say the right thing or for the world to finally become fair. It's waiting for me to change my gaze. It's waiting for me to open the door of my own heart and decide that I'm tired of being cold. Happiness starts to bloom the moment we stop looking for it outside ourselves and start looking at how we perceive what's already here. It's a shift from a closed heart to an open one. A heart that is wide enough to hold the suffering and the joy at the same time, without needing to choose one over the other. We often think of suffering as a mistake, as something that shouldn't be happening. We feel like we've taken a wrong turn on the road of life when we hit a patch of grief or a season of failure. We want to complain, to blame the heavens, or to just give up. But what if every obstacle on our path is actually a quiet, stern teacher? What if the hard moments are the very things that are training our will, strengthening our resilience, and teaching us how to be truly patient? The path of life and the path of the heart are really the same thing. They both require a certain kind of persistence, a willingness to keep walking even when you can't see the end of the road. Sometimes we fail, and in that failure, we learn the value of humility. We learn how to be small, and in being small, we find a different kind of strength, a strength that doesn't need to shout to be real. And then there are the times we succeed, and we learn the value of courage and the importance of faith. We meet so many people. We experience so many different flavors of existence. We deal with the petty, the grand, the honest, and the deceptive. We move through the noise of social gatherings and the profound silence of our own thoughts. And after a while, If we're paying attention, we start to see the preciousness in all of it. We see the value in a true friendship, the necessity of a misunderstanding that forces us to grow, and the deep, quiet beauty of just being at peace with the mundane. There's a freedom in knowing how to let go of the things that make us feel small and bitter. It's about knowing when to walk away from the places and the people that no longer nourish our spirit. It's not about being judgmental. It's about being protective of our own inner light. If we can just keep our eyes on the good, the true, and the beautiful, then today, right now, is always the perfect place to start. The root of our joy is really just in how we think about the people and the events in our lives. I've been trying to train my mind to find a different way of reacting. For example, when someone points out my flaws or judges me, my first instinct is usually to get defensive, to push back, to prove them wrong. But lately, I've been wondering, what if I just learned to laugh at myself? What if I could look at my own imperfections with a bit of warmth and humor? There's a certain confidence that comes from admitting you aren't perfect and being completely okay with that. It's like saying to the world, yes, I have these jagged edges, and I'm still here, and I'm still worthy of love. When we can admit our own faults to ourselves, we stop needing to hide them from everyone else. And in that honesty, we actually start to move forward. We stop spending all our energy on the mask and start spending it on the man. It's completely normal to have a different opinion than the person next to you. We don't have to think the same way or see the world through the same lens. You don't have to change your heart just because it doesn't match the crowd. As long as you can live without hurting others and without betraying your own conscience, you're doing just fine. I've noticed that some people seem to have it easier than others. They seem to have been favored by life, while others struggle from the moment they wake up. It's not fair, and it's not easy to accept, but maybe that's part of the lesson too. Life isn't fair. It's just life. You take the hand you've been dealt, and you play it as well as you can. You keep striving, keep moving toward whatever goals you've set for yourself, even if you never quite reach the summit. The point isn't the destination, it's the distance you've traveled from where you started. We're never going to have everything we want. As soon as we get the thing we were sure would make us happy, our mind starts looking for the next thing. It's a cycle that never ends unless we decide to break it. The secret is learning how to be content with what's in our hands right now, so we can stop feeling that constant, low-level stress of not enough. We have to choose how to spend our time, which battles are worth fighting, and which ones are just a waste of our precious energy. There are people who choose a shortcut, the path of deception or greed, and they might seem to get ahead faster, but they're running a different race. If you choose to be a good person, a person of integrity, you're playing the long game, and the reward for that isn't always a trophy or a bigger bank account. Sometimes, it's just the ability to sleep well at night. It's the peace of mind that comes from knowing you haven't done anything you have to hide. If we expect other people to make us happy, we're going to be disappointed. It's a hard pill to swallow, but no one else is responsible for our inner state. If we can learn to love the world and the people in it without constantly checking to see what they're giving us in return, we find a different kind of stability. We stop being so fragile. We stop being so dependent on the weather of other people's moods. It's like we're all just trying to find a way to be okay with the fact that everything is changing all the time. We see the impermanence of things, and it scares us. But if we look closer, that same impermanence is what makes life possible. It's what allows the seasons to turn, the flowers to bloom, and our own hearts to heal. We can't hold back the tide. We can't stop the sun from setting. We can only choose how we stand on the shore. We can choose to be bitter about the things we've lost, or we can choose to be grateful for the time we had with them. We can look at the wrong side of life and let it harden us, or we can realize that the light and the dark are just two sides of the same coin. The more we can let go, the more room we have for peace. And that peace, it isn't something we have to create. It's something that's already there, underneath the noise and the worry. It's the self that doesn't change, the quiet that remains even when the world is loud. I was thinking about how much we worry about what people say about us, as if their words have the power to change who we actually are. I was thinking about how much we worry about what people say about us, as if their words have the power to change who we actually are. It's a strange weight to carry, the weight of other people's opinions. When you stop and really look at it, you realize that you don't actually exist as just one person. In the minds of everyone you know, there is a different version of you. To your parents, you are one thing. To your co-workers, another. To a stranger you passed on the street who caught you on a bad day, you are someone else entirely. We are fragmented into 1,000 different versions of ourselves, living in the mouths and the memories of people who only see a tiny sliver of our lives. And if we try to please all of them, if we try to reconcile all those different versions into one perfect image, we just end up losing our own center. We start to live our lives like we're performing on a stage for an audience that isn't even paying that much attention. Because the truth is, everyone else is just as preoccupied with their own versions as we are. Their eyes are the same as ours, but their perspectives are completely different. Their hearts are built the same way, but they spend their energy and their love in ways we might never understand. What feels right to one person might feel completely wrong to another, simply because of where they're standing. Our circumstances, our history, the way we were raised, it all creates this lens that we can't help but look through. So, why do we let it hurt us so much when someone doesn't see us clearly? Why do we let their take on our lives dictate how we feel when we wake up in the morning? Maybe we can learn something from the things in nature that don't look for an audience. Think about an eagle soaring high above a mountain range. It doesn't need a crowd to cheer for it to feel the strength in its wings. It doesn't wait for applause before it takes flight. Or think about the grass in a field. It doesn't need someone to come by and tell it it's doing a good job of growing. It just reaches for the sun because that's what it does. Even the wildflowers deep in the woods, in places where no human will ever walk, they still bloom. They still send their fragrance out into the air, not because they want to be noticed, but because blooming is their nature. I think we can be like that, too. We can do our work and live our lives without needing everyone to understand us. We can be kind and generous without needing everyone to love us. If we can just find that internal confidence, that quiet sense of, this is who I am and this is the path I'm walking, then the noise of the world starts to fade into the background. We can be direct, we can be open, and we can be gentle, and that's enough. We don't have to be everything to everyone. We just have to be true to ourselves. So much of our pain, I've noticed, comes from this deep-seated fear of losing things. We lose a job, we lose a friend, we lose our youth, and it feels like a part of us is being torn away. We fall into this deep, dark hole of grief, unable to accept that things have changed. But I've been wondering lately, can we actually lose something we never really owned? It's an uncomfortable question. We like to think we own our lives, our relationships, our reputations. But if something can be taken away, was it ever truly ours? The things that are really ours, our character, our capacity for love, our inner peace, those are the things that stay, no matter what the outside world does. Everything else is just passing through. It's like a guest staying in a hotel room. They might enjoy the view and the comfort for a while, but they know they don't own the furniture. When we realize that we're just visiting these parts of our lives, the pressure to hold on tight starts to ease up. We can love people more deeply because we aren't trying to possess them. We can enjoy our success more fully because we aren't terrified of the day it might end. We start to find a different kind of freedom, the freedom of moving through the world with open hands. It's like anger. We think we're angry because someone did something wrong to us. But if we look a little closer, maybe we're angry because our own heart wasn't quite wide enough to hold that person's imperfection. If our tolerance were a little deeper, if our perspective were a little broader, that same event might not have triggered the same fire. We often think of our emotions as things that happen to us, but they're really just reflections of what's happening inside us. Every time we feel that familiar spark of irritation or that heavy blanket of worry, it's actually a quiet little invitation. It's an opportunity to turn back inward and look at the landscape of our own minds. It's a chance to see where we're still a little bit fragile, where we're still a little bit too attached to things being a certain way. If we can see our problems as practice, everything changes. I like to think about our lives as a moon in the sky. We all have this inner light, this potential for goodness and peace that we're born with. It's like the moon on a clear night, but the way we live our lives, the choices we make, the way we treat people determines whether that moon is waxing or waning. If we spend our days being resentful or selfish or dishonest, it's like the moon moving toward the end of the month. The light starts to fade. We retreat into the shadows of our own making, and the world starts to feel like a dark and lonely place. But if we can find ways to be a little more compassionate, a little more helpful, a little more grateful, then the light starts to grow. We move from the sliver of the new moon toward the fullness of the harvest moon, and that growth doesn't just benefit us. A full moon lights up the whole path for everyone who's walking on it. When we work on our own light, we're actually making the world a little brighter for everyone we meet. It's a beautiful way to think about our impact, isn't it? That we don't have to do big things to be meaningful. We just have to keep our own light from fading. There are going to be storms. We know this. There will be days when the clouds are so thick we can't see the moon at all. But if we just keep telling ourselves, this is just a storm, and the sun is still there behind it, we can find the strength to keep walking. We don't have to waste our energy complaining about the rain or shouting at the wind. We can just keep moving, trusting that the sky will eventually clear. It's the same with our mistakes. We all have things we regret, things we wish we could do over. We can spend our lives looking backward, lost in the if-onlys, or we can decide that today is a fresh start. As long as we have a tomorrow, today is always the best time to head toward what is true and good. Happiness, I think, is really just a matter of how we choose to view the people and the events in our lives. If we can train ourselves to look for the precious in the ordinary, we find that we don't need nearly as much as we thought we did to be okay. We can find joy in a simple meal, or a quiet conversation, or the way the light hits the trees in the late afternoon. We can learn how to let go of the things that make us feel heavy and bitter. We can learn how to walk away from the noise and the vanity, and move toward the things that are real. It's a slow process, a daily practice of choosing where to put our attention. But if we can keep our hearts soft and our minds open, the journey itself starts to feel like the destination. We're all just trying to navigate this sea of life, with its waves and its currents. Sometimes the water is calm, and sometimes it's rough. But if we can learn how to be like the water, soft, yielding, and yet powerful enough to carve through stone, we can move through anything without losing our way. I was thinking about how we often feel like we have to solve every complication right away, as if a life with unsolved problems is somehow a failure. We tend to get so knotted up in a single problem, don't we? It's like we fixate on one loose thread until we've managed to unravel the entire sweater. I've noticed that the more I obsess over a complication, the more intricate and impossible it starts to feel. But really, even the most tangled situations can often be resolved by just simplifying. We have this habit of adding layers of what ifs and how could theys until the original issue is buried under a mountain of our own mental noise. If we can just hold on to a bit of inner calm, a sense of openness, maybe things wouldn't have to be quite so heavy. It feels like life passes by in the blink of an eye, and I find myself wondering how much time I've wasted chasing things that are essentially hollow: fame, status, the need to be somebody. If we can just step past those illusions, maybe we can finally touch something that feels true. It's about moving through the world with lighter luggage. I think about that a lot. The luggage we carry. Not just the physical things, but the grudges, the unnecessary entanglements, the constant need to be in control. When the path is long and the journey is demanding, the only way to keep going without breaking down is to pack light. If we can just solve the complex things with a gentle touch and let go of the friction that doesn't serve us, the road ahead starts to look a lot more inviting. It's like yielding the right of way in traffic. You might get there a few seconds later, but you arrive with your peace of mind intact. You avoid the petty collisions that drain your energy for no reason. I've started to realize that the most beautiful views in life aren't necessarily the ones we see with our eyes. It's more about how the heart perceives the world. You can be standing in the middle of a stunning landscape and feel completely miserable if your mind is cluttered with resentment. Conversely, you can be in the most ordinary setting, a quiet kitchen, a city park, and find something truly sublime if your heart is settled. There's a depth of feeling that doesn't even need words to exist. It's just a quiet recognition, a sense of being at home in the moment. I find myself thinking about water a lot lately. Water is so soft, so yielding, and yet it's one of the most powerful forces on earth. It doesn't fight the rock in its path. It simply flows around it, or over it, or quietly wears it down over time. It adapts. It fills whatever container it's in. It's patient. If we could learn to move like that, to be less rigid, to be more willing to flow with the changes rather than constantly pushing against them, imagine how much quieter our lives would be. We wouldn't need to win every argument or fix every person. We could just absorb, transform, and move on. If we look at people and choose to see their strengths, or look at events and try to find a grain of meaning in them, the whole world starts to feel like a friendlier place. But if we approach everything with a suffering mind, then everything we encounter starts to look like a problem or a burden. It's almost as if we're projecting our own internal weather onto the landscape. I've met people who seem to radiate a kind of inner beauty, a light that doesn't have much to do with their physical features. It's a glow that comes from a clean conscience and a spirit that has found its way to joy. It's the kind of beauty that makes everyone around them feel a little more relaxed, a little more at ease. I suppose everything we experience is just the result of the ripples we've created in the past. It's a continuous chain of cause and effect. If we can become aware of that the things we're doing right now are the seeds of what we'll experience later, we might be a little more careful with our thoughts and our words. We might choose to be a bit more compassionate, to help someone who's struggling, or to simply offer a word of thanks. When we trust in that natural balance, we stop feeling the need to settle the score or to complain when things don't go our way. We realize that we're part of a much larger, much older rhythm. We hear so much about going with the flow, but I've been trying to understand what that actually means in the middle of a difficult day. It's not about being indifferent or lazy. It's more like an active kind of acceptance. It's the decision to stop resisting the reality of the present moment. It's saying, okay, this is what is happening right now. I'm not going to fight it, and I'm not going to run away from it. I'm just going to sit with it until the next right step becomes clear. It's a quiet kind of waiting, a trust that the conditions will eventually shift. Think about how many millions of invisible threads have to come together for a single event to happen. 1,000 yeses and 1,000 nos, all converging at once. When we realize how complex that web is, we start to understand why we can't always make things happen just by wanting them to. We need the right conditions to align. If one thread is missing, the whole tapestry is different. Understanding this doesn't make me feel powerless. It actually makes me feel more patient. It takes the pressure off. I don't have to be the one who makes the world spin. I just have to be the one who knows how to dance with it. We often label things as good or bad, favorable or unfavorable. But those are just human labels. The universe doesn't see it that way. Conditions just converge or they disperse based on the energy we're putting out. Sometimes, the things we call bad, the setbacks, the no we didn't want to hear, are the very things that help us grow. They're the friction that makes us stronger. And sometimes, the good things make us a little soft, a little too comfortable, a little less aware. You never really know if a misfortune is actually a blessing in disguise until much later, when you can look back and see the whole pattern. So, maybe we don't need to be so urgent about changing the things we don't like. Maybe we don't need to be so desperate to find the things we think we're missing. If we can work on making our own internal state a little more stable, a little more peaceful, then the world outside will eventually reflect that, like calls to like. If you're a person who carries peace in your pocket, you'll find that peace starts to show up in the people you meet and the situations you find yourself in. It's not magic, it's just the way the frequencies of life seem to work. There's a strange kind of luck in not getting what you want sometimes. It's a hard thought to hold on to when you're feeling disappointed, but it's true. Not getting that job, or that house, or that person, it leaves you free for something else that you might not even be able to imagine yet. It's like being handed a sour lemon. You could just focus on the puckering sourness, or you could find a way to make it into something that actually nourishes you. The lemon is just a lemon. The sourness or the refreshment is something you choose to create. I think a lot of our inner turmoil comes from demanding that the people in our lives be perfect. We want them to treat us with total understanding all the time. But when we can accept that everything is relative, that everyone is just trying to find their way through their own complicated story, the frustration starts to melt. If we can accept people as they are, with all their quirks and their lapses in judgment, we find that we have so much more room for happiness. We stop being so disappointed. We stop feeling so let down. We start to see that the connections between us are based on our shared imperfections, not our absolute rightness. Nothing in this world is truly independent. We're all leaning on each other, all part of this vast, shifting landscape. No one is perfectly whole on their own, and no one is completely broken. We're just here, witnessing it all, trying to find that one spot on the floor where the sun hits just right, and learning how to stay there for a moment before the light moves on. It makes me wonder about the nature of the things we try so hard to keep. I've noticed that the things we guard most fiercely are usually the ones that are the most fragile. We try so hard to keep our world exactly as it is, but if we're honest with ourselves, we're living in a world that is always in motion, always shifting under our feet. I've been sitting with this thought lately, the idea that nothing, absolutely nothing, is permanent or absolute. We use these big, heavy words like always and never, but they don't really exist out there in the real world. They only exist in our minds, in the stories we tell ourselves to feel safe. I think about the people we find most difficult. We all have someone like that, someone whose name alone causes a little knot of tension in the chest. We label them as unbearable or wrong, and we build this solid, immovable image of them as a bad person. But if you were to catch them in a different light, Perhaps on a Tuesday morning when they're quiet and distracted, you might see something else. You might notice a trace of kindness in how they hold a door, or a flash of vulnerability when they talk about someone they've lost. It's a bit of a shock to realize that the hatefulness we see in them is actually just relative. It's based on our own perspective, our own wounds, and our own limited view of their story. If we can see that their flaws are relative, then maybe our anger doesn't have to be so absolute either. It's the same with the people we love the most. We put them on these high, gleaming pedestals and demand that they be perfect. We want their love to be a constant, unwavering light. But they're just people, aren't they? They get tired, they get cranky, they make mistakes, and they have those little lapses in judgment that remind us they're just as flawed as we are. If we can accept that their sweetness is also relative, that they have their shadows just like everyone else, we stop being so devastated when they fail to meet our impossible standards. We can love them for who they actually are, rather than for the perfect version we've created in our heads. There's an old sentiment about how when we love someone, even their flaws seem like beauty, but when the love fades, even their best qualities feel like a burden. It's all so subjective, isn't it? Our feelings are like weather, one day sunny and warm, the next day cold and grey. And yet, we try to build these permanent structures on top of this shifting ground. We trap ourselves in these prisons of absolute expectations. We want the world to be consistent, but we aren't consistent ourselves. We want everyone to be honest, but we hide our own truths. We want everyone to be patient, but we lose our temper over a slow internet connection. I've come to realize that this prison of the heart, this cage we build out of our own demands for perfection, is where most of our suffering lives. We are both the prisoner and the guard. We pace back and forth, wondering why the world won't just behave the way we want it to. But the door to that cage isn't actually locked. It's been standing open the whole time. The key is just accepting that life is messy, that people are complicated, and that good and bad are usually just matters of opinion. When we can step out of that prison, the air feels different. We start to see that there's no such thing as an absolute enemy or an absolute hero. There are just people, each one of us carrying our own bundle of joys and sorrows, trying to make it through the day. If someone treats us poorly, maybe we can see it as a reflection of their own internal storm, rather than a personal attack on us. If someone lets us down, maybe we can see it as a reminder that we are all, at our core, beautifully imperfect. I've been thinking about who actually has the power to make me happy. For a long time, I thought it was the world. I thought if I just had the right job, the right house, and the right people around me, then I'd finally be at peace. But that's like trying to be happy by making sure the clouds always stay in the same place. It's impossible. The only person who can truly shift the internal atmosphere is the one living inside it. If I can learn to look at the world with a bit more openness, a bit more humor, and a lot more grace, then my experience of the world changes, even if the world itself stays exactly the same. It feels like happiness is less about getting what we want and more about becoming someone who can hold whatever happens. It's a shift from the internal "I want" to the internal "I am." When we're grounded in our own sense of self, the external noise starts to matter a lot less. We stop being so fragile. We stop needing everyone to agree with us or applaud us. We can just be here, part of the flow, watching the ripples on the pond without needing to stop them. I find myself thinking about the word tolerance, or maybe spaciousness. A heart that is large and wide doesn't see every obstacle as an injustice. It doesn't see every setback as a reason to complain. Instead, it sees those things as opportunities for practice. It's like a runner who sees a steep hill not as a problem, but as the very thing that is going to make their legs stronger. Every difficult person, every unfortunate event, every moment of failure, these are all just training grounds. They're the weights we lift to build our internal strength. It takes a lot of patience to live this way, I know. It's not a switch we can just flip. It's a slow, steady effort. It's the decision to keep walking even when the path is muddy and the destination is hidden in the fog. But maybe that's the whole point of the journey. Maybe we aren't supposed to arrive at some perfect, sunny destination. Maybe the arrival is just the realization that we're already here, and that the path itself, with all its twists and turns, is exactly where we need to be. Life has this way of bringing us exactly what we need to learn, even if it's not what we thought we wanted. We meet people who challenge our patience so that we can learn how to be truly patient. We encounter situations that test our courage so that we can find the strength we didn't know we had. We experience loss so that we can learn the value of what we still have. If we can look at our lives as a continuous process of learning and refining, then nothing is ever truly bad. It's all just part of the curriculum. I suspect that the more we can let go of the need to be right or successful in the eyes of the world, the more we can actually enjoy the life we're living. We spend so much time looking at the white and the black, the right and the wrong, that we miss all the subtle, beautiful shades of gray in between. We miss the complexity, the nuance, and the quiet truth that lives in the middle. If we can just be quiet for a moment and listen to the world, rather than trying to tell the world how it should be, we might hear something different. We might realize that we've been trying so hard to conquer our lives that we've forgotten how to just inhabit them. We've been so focused on the finish line that we've forgotten how to feel the ground beneath our feet. There's a freedom in just being ordinary, in not needing to be anyone special or achieve anything grand. When you stop trying to be a giant, you realize that being a human being is actually a pretty remarkable thing on its own. You don't need the world to bow to you. You just need to be able to bow to the world, to see the preciousness in every single breath, every single encounter, every single sunrise. It's all about the attitude we bring to the day. If we wake up with a heart that's already decided the world is a difficult place, then we're going to find all the evidence we need to prove it. But if we wake up and decide to look for the goodness, even in the smallest, most hidden places, we'll find that too. The world is like a mirror. It reflects back to us whatever we're holding in our own hands. I've been trying to practice that, looking for the good lately. It's not always easy, especially when things are going wrong, but it makes a difference. It changes the way I talk to people, the way I handle stress, and the way I feel when I finally close my eyes at night. It's like turning on a small, quiet light in a room that's been dark for a long time. The room is still the same, but you can finally see where you're going. I'm starting to think that the most important work we ever do is the work that happens when no one is watching. It's the way we talk to ourselves when we've made a mistake. It's the way we choose to respond to a slight. It's the quiet decision to be kind, even when we don't feel like it. That's where the real transformation happens. Not in the big, dramatic moments, but in the small, quiet choices we make 100 times a day. It makes me wonder why we're so afraid of the silence, when the silence is actually where all the answers are waiting. It's interesting how silence can feel so heavy at first, almost like a pressure against the ears, until you settle into it. We spend so much of our lives trying to fill the quiet with noise, with music, with conversation, with the endless hum of our own thoughts, as if we're afraid of what we might hear if everything just stopped. But there's a different kind of sound that happens when you finally stop fighting the quiet. It's a softer rhythm, one that doesn't demand anything from you. It's like the way a room feels after a long party has ended and everyone has gone home. The air finally has space to move again. I've been thinking lately about the faces we carry into the world. You've probably noticed it too, how as we get older, our history starts to settle into the lines around our eyes and the set of our mouths. It's almost as if our inner world eventually leaks out and becomes our outer world. There's that old idea that after a certain age, we are responsible for our own faces. It's not about beauty in the way we usually think of it, not about symmetry or youth, but more about a kind of spirit that shines through. You see someone who has spent decades being curious and kind, and there's a softness to them, a warmth that makes you want to sit near them. And then you see someone who has carried a lot of bitterness, someone who has spent their years calculating every slight and nurturing every resentment. And it shows. It's there in the tension of the jaw, the hardness of the gaze. It makes me wonder if our thoughts are really just the sculptors of our lives. If the heart is beautiful, then the presence we bring into a room becomes beautiful too. When someone is full of a quiet kind of love, you feel it in their every movement, even when they aren't saying a word. But when someone is always measuring, always comparing, always trying to get just a little bit more than the person next to them, they always seem to be in a struggle. They're exhausted by their own calculations. They spend so much time trying to win these tiny, invisible battles that they forget how to just be a friend, or a neighbor, or even just a person standing in line for coffee. There's such a peace in being the kind of person who knows how to be generous with their spirit, not because they have to be, or because they're looking for a reward, but because they've realized that being narrow-minded is just another way of being small. If we can learn to be a little more tolerant, a little more spacious in our hearts, we find that we don't have to spend so much time being offended. We don't have to take everything so personally. I think about that old saying about stepping back to see the view. Take one step back, and the ocean feels wider. It's so true, isn't it? In the heat of an argument, or when someone has really gotten under our skin, our world becomes very, very small. It becomes just us and our hurt. But if we can just take that one step back, if we can just wait a beat before we respond, the perspective shifts. We realize that we don't have to advance every time. We don't have to win every point. Sometimes, stepping back is actually the way you move forward. It's the way you gain more friends, more respect, and most importantly, more peace. If moving forward means losing your sense of self or your kindness, then maybe it's a good time to just stop, or even move back a few steps. It doesn't matter how many steps it takes to find yourself again. We live in a culture that is so obsessed with success, with this idea of making it to the top. But success is such a relative thing, isn't it? It's a target that's always moving. If we define our happiness by some future point where we've finally made it, we're essentially putting our lives on hold. We're waiting for a then that might never come, while ignoring the now that is happening right this second. It's like chasing a ghost. You can spend your whole life running after it and forget to notice the sun on your back while you're running. I've been trying to practice just seeing things as they are, seeing white as white and black as black, without trying to find the hidden meaning or the hidden fault. If someone is being kind, I try to just accept the kindness. If someone is struggling, I try to see the struggle. It sounds so simple, but we spend so much of our time trying to find the black in the white and the white in the black. We're always looking for the catch, always suspicious, always trying to stay 2 steps ahead of a world we're afraid is out to get us. But when we stop trying to categorize everything, the world feels a lot less hostile. Maybe the reason we suffer so much is because we're constantly looking at what everyone else has. We compare our insides to everyone else's outsides. We see someone who seems more successful, or more attractive, or more together, and we feel like we're falling behind. But that comparison is a thief. It steals our joy and replaces it with a dull kind of ache. If you're a blade of grass, you don't need to worry about the oak tree. You just grow. If you're a wildflower, in the middle of a forest where no one will ever see you. You still bloom. You still send your scent into the air. You don't need an audience to be whole. I've been thinking about work, too. It's so easy to fall into the trap of seeing our daily responsibilities as a burden, as something we just have to get through so we can finally start our real lives. We complain, we procrastinate, we resent the time it takes. But what if we looked at it differently? What if we saw our work as a form of art, or a way of participating in the world? If we can approach even the most mundane tasks with a sense of presence and a bit of a positive spirit, the burden starts to feel a lot lighter. It stops being something that is using us up and starts being something that is just part of our life's rhythm. Every day we wake up is a kind of small miracle, isn't it? To have one more day to see the sun rise and set, to hear the wind, to talk to someone we care about. It's such a short trip we're on, maybe just a few decades if we're lucky. It seems like such a waste to spend any of that time being miserable over things that won't matter in a year or even in a week. If we can stay out of the he said, she said, if we can stop worrying about the rumors or the misunderstandings, life becomes so much simpler. People are going to talk. They're going to have their opinions, and those opinions are going to change based on which way the wind is blowing. We can't satisfy everyone, and we shouldn't try. As long as we know we're acting from a place of honesty and kindness, that's enough. We just have to be our own best version of ourselves. It's like that idea of a kindness account. We spend a lot of time worrying about our bank accounts, making sure we have enough for a rainy day. But what about the relationships we're building? Are we depositing kindness and patience into the lives of the people around us? Or are we only reaching out when we're in trouble, when we need something? It's much better to build those connections when things are going well, to be a source of support for others, so that when the hard times come, and they will, we aren't just grabbing for the Buddha's feet in a panic. We're already part of a community of care. I've been trying to be more mindful of that, especially when I'm feeling angry or frustrated. I try to put myself in the other person's shoes, even just for a second. It doesn't mean I have to agree with them, but it helps me see them as a human being who is probably just as tired and overwhelmed as I am. It makes it easier to let the small things go. It makes it easier to keep the peace. There's a freedom in knowing that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. You can just be here, learning as you go, trying to be a little bit better today than you were yesterday. And if you fail, you just start again. The sun will come up tomorrow whether you're ready for it or not, and it's always a chance for a fresh start. I suppose that's the most important thing, the realization that we're always at the beginning. No matter how much we've lost or how many mistakes we've made, this moment right now is a clean slate. We can choose to be bitter, or we can choose to be grateful. We can choose to hold on to the past, or we can choose to step into the future with a light heart. It's about finding that balance, I think. Knowing when to speak and when to be silent. Knowing when to push and when to yield. Knowing that life isn't something we have to conquer, but something we get to experience. And if we can just stay open to it, if we can just keep our hearts a little bit soft, then even the hard parts start to feel like they belong. I was thinking about how we often wait for the big moments to feel happy, when really it's the small, quiet ones that stay with us. It's those small, quiet moments that stay with us, isn't it? The way the light catches a dust mote in the afternoon, or the sound of a distant rain. I've come to realize that the world we inhabit isn't really a fixed place. It's more like a mirror of our own internal state. If we wake up and decide to look for the goodness in the people we meet, to see their strengths rather than their shortcomings, life starts to feel like a series of gifts. The world feels vibrant and full of possibility. But if we approach our days with a heart full of worry, or a mind clouded by old grievances, then every interaction starts to feel like a burden, like an obstacle in our way. We call them problems or bad luck, but maybe they're just reflections of the noise we're carrying inside. I've been thinking a lot about the people who seem to radiate a natural kind of beauty, not the kind you find in a magazine, but something much deeper. It's a presence that makes everyone in the room feel a little more at ease, a little lighter. I suspect that the most effective way to be truly beautiful is simply to cultivate a quiet, joyful spirit. When the mind is clear and the heart is at peace, it shows on the face. It's a softness in the gaze, a warmth in the smile that doesn't feel forced. It's a beauty that doesn't demand anything and doesn't fade with time. People aren't drawn to it because of symmetry, they're drawn to it because it feels like home. It's a reminder that peace is possible, even in a world that can be so loud. It's an interesting thought that everything we're experiencing right now, the good, the difficult, the unexpected, is essentially the fruit of seeds we planted a long time ago. And by that same logic, everything we're doing today, every thought we entertain, and every word we speak is a seed for what's coming next. Life isn't just a series of random events. It's a continuous flow of cause and effect. When we really start to see that, we stop feeling like victims of circumstance. We stop blaming the world or the heavens for our misfortune. Instead, we start to be more careful with how we move through our days. We realize that being diligent, being kind, and living with a sense of sacrifice isn't just a moral choice, it's a way of building a more peaceful future for ourselves and for everyone around us. I find myself wondering about the power of a grateful heart. When we reach out to help someone else, especially someone who is struggling more than we are, something shifts in our own internal atmosphere. It's as if by helping another person find a moment of relief, we find it for ourselves too. It's a way of saying thank you to life, a way of acknowledging all the invisible ways we've been supported. When we trust in that natural balance of giving and receiving, we stop holding on so tightly to what we think is ours. We realize that true abundance isn't about how much we have, but about how much we can share. There's a phrase I hear often, this idea of going with the flow or letting things be. It sounds simple, almost passive, but I think it's actually a very active, courageous way to live. It's about accepting the reality of the present moment with a sense of joy, rather than constantly pushing back against it. It isn't about knowing that for anything to happen, any success, any meeting, any change, a million tiny conditions have to align perfectly. Think about that for a second. Millions of invisible threads coming together just so you can be here, right now, having this experience. If even one thread were missing, the whole picture would be different. When we understand how complex that web of conditions is, we stop being so urgent. We stop trying to force things to happen before they're ready. We do our part. We plant the seeds. We tend the garden. But we wait for the sun and the rain to do theirs. It's a kind of yielding that is actually incredibly strong. It's like the ocean. It only becomes vast because it is low enough to receive all the rivers. If we can keep our hearts low, humble, and open, we find that life starts to fill us up in ways we couldn't have planned. We often categorize the things that happen to us as favorable or unfavorable, good or bad. We love it when things go our way, and we want those moments to last forever. And when we hit a patch of bad luck, we do everything we can to avoid it. But I've noticed that some of my greatest periods of growth came from the moments I thought were unfavorable. Those were the times I had to find a different kind of strength, a deeper kind of patience. Sometimes, a difficult situation is exactly what we need to wake us up, to make us realize that we've been sleepwalking through our lives. And sometimes, the good times are the ones that make us a little too comfortable, a little too unaware. You never really know which is which until much later. What looks like a disaster today might be the very thing that saves you tomorrow. And what looks like a great success might be the thing that leads you down a path that doesn't actually suit you. So perhaps the best way to live is to just receive it all with the same quiet heart. To not get too high when things are good and not get too low when they're hard. To just stay steady. I think about the way we often feel like we're missing out on something, or that we need to be somewhere else to be truly happy. But what if we're already where we need to be? What if the peace we're looking for is already here, just waiting for our internal noise to settle down so we can finally hear it? It's a bit like looking for your glasses when they're already on your head. We look everywhere else in our careers, in our possessions, in the approval of others, when all along, the source of our contentment was just a few breaths away. It takes a lot of practice to trust that things are unfolding as they should. We want to be in control. We want to be the ones holding the reins. But there's a relief in realizing that we don't have to be the masters of the universe. We just have to be the masters of our own reactions. We can choose to be the person who brings a little more compassion into a difficult room. We can choose to be the one who offers a word of encouragement instead of a criticism. We can choose to be the one who stays calm when everyone else is panicking. That choice is where our real power lives. Not in changing the world, but in changing how we inhabit it. And as we change, it's amazing how the world around us seems to change too. The people we thought were difficult start to seem a little more human. The tasks we thought were boring start to seem a little more meaningful. The day that felt like a marathon starts to feel like a walk in a garden. It's all connected: our thoughts, our actions, and the life that flows from them. If we can just stay mindful of that, if we can just keep bringing our attention back to this moment and this breath, then we stop being so afraid of the future. We stop regretting the past. We just are. I've been learning to enjoy the sourness of life too. I used to think that a good life was one where nothing ever went wrong. But now, I think a good life is one where you know how to handle the sour moments as gracefully as the sweet ones. If life gives you a lemon, you don't have to just endure the bitterness. You can find a way to make it into something that refreshes you. It's not about ignoring the pain or the difficulty. It's about having the internal tools to transform it. It's about the attitude we bring to the table. Are we going to be the ones who complain about the taste? Or are we going to be the ones who find a way to enjoy the drink? The lemon stays the same, but the experience is entirely up to us. And as we get better at that alchemy, we realize that there's a certain beauty even in the things that once made us pucker. We start to see the sour, not as an enemy, but just as another flavor of being alive. I'm starting to think that maybe we don't need a perfect life to be happy. We just need a heart that is big enough to hold an imperfect one. I was wondering, if we stop demanding that everything be absolute, does the world suddenly feel a lot more spacious? That spaciousness, it's a funny thing. We spend so much of our lives trying to fill every corner, as if an empty space is somehow a mistake. But if you look at a room, it's the empty space that makes it useful. It's the gap in the doorway that lets you through. I've been thinking lately about how that same principle applies to our relationships and the way we view other people. We demand absolute perfection from them, absolute loyalty, absolute kindness. But the very foundation of this life is built on something much softer. It's built on interdependence, this quiet, constant exchange between you and me, between this world and the next. No one really lives as a completely independent island. We like to think we do, especially when we're feeling proud or successful. But the reality is that we are all leaning on each other. My life is a series of relative connections. I am only me because of you. And because everything is relative, nothing can ever be truly perfect in an absolute sense. There's no such thing as someone who is 100% good or 100% bad. We're all just a shifting mix of both, depending on the day, the light, and how much sleep we've had. If you can really sit with that idea that life is a series of relative truths, the world starts to feel a lot less threatening. If you look at the person you've been struggling with, the one you think you truly can't stand, and you look past your own grievance, you might find something tucked away in them that is actually quite tender. Maybe it's the way they're always a little too early for appointments because they're secretly afraid of being forgotten, or the way they look when they're genuinely lost in a book. When you see that their badness is just a relative thing, a reaction to their own pain or their own history, your own anger starts to lose its solid edges. It's no longer this heavy, absolute weight you have to carry. It becomes lighter. It becomes something you can actually set down. We realize that our hatred was just a cage we built for ourselves, a small, dark room where we were both the prisoner and the guard. We often trap ourselves in these prisons of our own making, don't we? We create these absolutes of how things must be. We want our children to be perfect, our partners to be mind readers, our careers to be endless climbs toward the sun. And when the reality doesn't match the blueprint, we suffer. We feel like life has betrayed us. But life didn't promise us a blueprint. It only promised us the experience. I've been thinking about the way we measure time, too. We act as if we have an infinite supply of it. But when you really boil a human life down, it's almost as if we only have 3 days. There's yesterday, there's today, and there's tomorrow. Yesterday is like water that has already flowed under the bridge, or a cloud that has already drifted past the mountain. It's gone. You can't reach back and change the current, no matter how much you might want to. And yet, we spend so much of our today living in the yesterday. We carry the regrets, the should-have-beens, the old hurts, like we're lugging around a trunk full of heavy, wet clothes. We let the ghost of yesterday haunt the house we're living in right now. And then there's tomorrow. Tomorrow is a promise that hasn't been kept yet. It's full of what-ifs and if-onlys. We spend our energy worrying about things that haven't happened, or planning for a future that is always just out of reach. We're so busy looking at the horizon that we trip over the stone right in front of our feet. That leaves us with today. This one day, this one breath. It's the only part of the story that is actually real. If we can learn to cherish today, to treat it not as a stepping stone to somewhere else, but as the destination itself, then we stop feeling so rushed. We stop arriving at the end of a year wondering where the months went. There's a natural rhythm to the world. The 4 seasons turn, one after another, spring to summer, fall to winter. They go in a circle, but a human life, it only goes one way. We only get one spring. We only get to plant these seeds once. It makes me wonder why we're so willing to waste our one season being bitter, or calculated, or afraid. Why not try to make it the best harvest we can? Why not try to live in a way that, when the winter of our life finally arrives, we can look back without that hollow ache of regret? We treat tomorrow like it's a guarantee, but it's really just a hope. And today, well, today is already slipping through our fingers like sand. If we can just stop for a second, just pause in the middle of all the noise and the doing, and notice the way the light is hitting the table, or the way the air feels on our skin, maybe that's where the real success is. Not in the achieving, but in the noticing. I've noticed that when I stop demanding that everything be absolute, the world suddenly feels a lot more spacious. I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. I don't need to have the last word. I don't need to be right. I can just be a person who is part of the flow. It's like being in a river. If you try to swim against the current, you're going to get exhausted. You're going to fight and splash and eventually sink. But if you just let the water carry you, if you trust that the river knows where the ocean is, you can just float. You can look at the trees as they go by. You can feel the sun. You're still moving. You're still living. But you aren't fighting the very thing that is sustaining you. There's a freedom in that kind of yielding. It's not about being weak. It takes a lot of strength to trust the water. It takes a lot of courage to stop trying to control every ripple. But on the other side of that trust is a peace that doesn't depend on the weather. I think we spend so much time trying to fix our yesterdays and secure our tomorrows that we've forgotten how to just inhabit our today. We've forgotten that this moment, right here, with this breath, is actually the whole point. We keep waiting for the real life to start, once we've solved all our problems or reached all our goals. But this is it. This messy, complicated, relative life is the real thing. Maybe the reason we feel so tired is because we're trying to carry all 3 days at once. We're carrying the weight of what happened 10 years ago and the fear of what might happen 10 years from now, all while trying to walk through a single Tuesday afternoon. No wonder we feel like we're stumbling. What if we just put the other 2 days down? What if we decided that yesterday is a story we've already read and tomorrow is a book that hasn't been written yet? Then all we have to handle is right now. And right now is usually manageable. Right now, there's usually enough air. Right now, there's a quiet place where we can just sit for a moment. I've been thinking about how we treat our today like it's something to be used up, rather than something to be experienced. We spend time, we kill time, we save time. But time isn't a currency. It's the medium we're swimming in. And if we can just relax into it, if we can just stop trying to measure it and start trying to feel it, everything starts to change. The people who are truly wise aren't necessarily the ones with all the answers. They're usually just the ones who have stopped asking the wrong questions. They've stopped asking, "Why isn't this perfect?" and started asking, "How can I be kind to this moment?" They've stopped looking for the absolute and started enjoying the relative. It's a slow shift, I know. We've been trained to be so calculated, so careful, so competitive. But every now and then, there's a crack in the noise. There's a moment where you realize that you don't actually have to be any of those things. You can just be a human being, breathing in and breathing out, part of a world that is much older and much wiser than any of our worries. And in that realization, there's a kind of warmth that starts to spread. It's the warmth of realizing that you're finally at home, even if you haven't moved an inch. You're at home in your own life, with all its loose ends and its unanswered questions. You're at home in the now. It's funny how we spend our whole lives trying to get somewhere, only to find out that the place we were looking for was right here all along. There's a quiet realization that comes when you wake up and realize that simply being here for one more day is actually a profound kind of fortune. We often treat our lives like a long, guaranteed marathon, but when you look at the math of it, the few decades we're given, it really is just a brief window. It's such a short trip. It seems almost tragic to spend any of those precious hours carrying around heavy regrets or nursing old wounds. I've been thinking about how often we let ourselves be swallowed by things that won't matter in a year or even a month. We get so tangled in the right and the wrong, the he said and the she said, that we forget the sun is going to set regardless of whether we've won the argument. I've been watching the way the day moves lately. The sun rises over the water in the east and eventually, inevitably, sinks behind the mountains in the west. It doesn't ask for our permission. It doesn't care if we've had a productive day or if we've spent the whole afternoon feeling sorry for ourselves. A day of sorrow is still just 24 hours. A day of joy is exactly the same length. They both pass. They both dissolve into the same twilight. When you really sit with that, the pressure to be something or achieve something starts to lose its grip. If the day is going to pass anyway, why not try to walk through it with a slightly lighter step? We spend so much time worrying about the tefi, that noise of public opinion, the gossip, the endless judgments of people who don't actually know our hearts. We wonder what they're saying behind our backs, or how we're being perceived in the world's eyes. But those words are just vibrations in the air. They have no power to change the actual quality of our spirit unless we invite them in and give them a seat at the table. If we can just stop caring about the useless noise, life becomes remarkably serene. Our spirit starts to feel like a room that's finally been cleared of all the clutter. I think about the work we do, too. It's so easy to see it as a burden, as a series of tasks that we just have to get through to reach the weekend or the vacation or the retirement. We fan, we complain, and we let our irritation build up. But what if we treated our work as a form of art? What if the doing was just as important as the done? When you stop fighting the task in front of you and just bring your full attention to it, whether it's filing a report, cooking a meal, or pulling weeds, the friction disappears. You aren't spending your time anymore, you're inhabiting it. You find a kind of joy in the rhythm of the work itself, a quiet satisfaction that doesn't need a promotion or a paycheck to feel real. It's about being grateful for the simple fact that we still have breath in our lungs. To have one more day to witness the world is a blessing that many didn't get today. It seems like a waste to spend it being angry at a mad dog that bit us. If you're walking down the street and a dog with no sense of self-control snaps at you, do you get down on or proceed to bite it back? Of course not. That would be absurd. And yet, when someone says something cruel or acts out of their own internal pain, we often respond by biting back with our own cruelty. We let their sickness become our sickness. We let their noise become our noise. But we don't have to. We can just keep walking. We can acknowledge that they are suffering in their own way and decide that their storm doesn't have to be ours. There's such a freedom in that, the realization that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You can just stay in your own peace. You can keep your internal atmosphere clear, no matter what's happening outside the window. I suppose that's the real secret to living a life that feels beautiful, learning how to simplify the complicated. We spend our youth trying to make our lives big and important, but as we get older, we start to see the value in being simple and ordinary. We realize that we don't need a mansion to feel safe. A quiet roof and a warm cup of tea can be enough. We don't need 1,000 friends to feel seen. 1 or 2 people who truly know us is plenty. We don't need the world to applaud us. We just need to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and not feel ashamed. I've been thinking about how we treat our today like it's just a bridge to tomorrow. We're always leaning forward, always waiting for the next thing. But tomorrow is never really here. When it arrives, it's just another today. If we can't find a way to be at peace right now, in the middle of all the loose ends and the unfinished business, we're never going to find it. Peace isn't a destination we reach after we've solved all our problems. It's the way we handle the problems while they're still happening. It's like the seasons. We don't wait for winter to be over before we decide to live. We find ways to stay warm and appreciate the quiet of the snow. We don't wait for the rain to stop before we notice the smell of the earth. Life is happening in the unfavorable conditions just as much as it is in the favorable ones. If we can just accept it all, the sun and the rain, the gain and the loss, then nothing can really knock us off our center. I'm starting to feel like the most important thing we can do is just stay kind to ourselves, mostly. We're so hard on ourselves for our mistakes, for the things we didn't do, for the ways we feel we failed, but we're all just works in progress. We're all just doing the best we can with the light we have. If we can offer ourselves a little bit of forgiveness, a little bit of room to be human, then it becomes so much easier to offer that same grace to everyone else. The world is always going to be a little bit messy. People are always going to be a little bit unpredictable. The sun is going to rise and it's going to set over and over. until one day it doesn't. And that's okay. There's a beauty in the transience of it all. It makes everything feel more precious, doesn't it? The fact that this moment is only happening once. This breath is the only one like it. This quiet evening is a unique event in the history of the universe. When you look at things that way, you stop wanting to rush through them. You stop wanting to kill time. You just want to be here. You want to feel the weight of your body in the chair, the coolness of the air, the steady beat of your own heart. You realize that you're part of something much larger, something much older, and that you belong here, exactly as you are. We don't need to change the world to be happy. We just need to change the way we sit in it. We need to learn how to let the thoughts pass through us without getting stuck. We need to learn how to open our hands and let the things we're holding too tightly just fall away. And when our hands are empty, that's when we can finally see how much we actually have. It's funny how the mind works. Even as I'm thinking about this, I feel a sense of things settling, like the dust in a room when the door is finally closed. There's no more need to strive, no more need to prove anything. The sun has gone down, the day is over, and whatever happened today is already becoming part of the past. It's done. We can let it go. We can just rest in the silence of what is. I find myself wondering what it would be like if we could carry this feeling into every moment, not just the quiet ones, but the loud ones, too. To be the calm in the middle of the storm, rather than the one trying to fight the wind. I suspect that's where the real strength lives. Not in the doing, but in the being. Just being a witness to the flow of life, with a heart that is wide enough to hold it all, and a mind that is clear enough to see the light, even on the darkest night. It's been a long day, hasn't it? But here we are, breathing in, breathing out. The world is still spinning, and we're still here, part of the dance. There's a certain comfort in that, a quiet kind of hope that doesn't need words to make sense. We just take the next step. Or maybe we just sit here for a while longer, watching the shadows change. I've been thinking about that image of the moon again, how it doesn't try to be anything other than what it is, and yet it changes the whole feeling of the night.